I said to my husband, what is the worst that happens? The worst that happens is I leave and the company doesn't take off. And so I go back and get another job. Can I live with that? And the answer was yes. And I knew it was not going to be a good situation if I stayed. It's all of these things working together, right? It's like me showing up. It's us utilizing really awesome partnership and collaboration and grassroots opportunities. And then it's, the social media piece as it's growing. And then just being authentic and connecting with the community. And the more we were authentic, and then it became not just me, right? It was like me and my team, and then we all showed up. Hey, this is Lindsay Pinchuk, and you're listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers, life moves fast, but time stands still when you're with the ones you love. Savor the moment, big or small, with Starbucks ready-to-drink coffee. From bottled Frappuccino drinks to canned nitro cold brew, Starbucks coffee gets you ready for the right now. Starbucks ready-to-drink coffee is available now, online, or wherever you buy groceries. Hey, Dream Drivers. Welcome to episode 319 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And today, our guest is Lindsay Pinchuk. So here's a little bit more about Lindsay. With just $500 in her pocket and a baby in her belly, she left a high-powered job as a magazine publishing executive and founded her first company, Bump Club and Beyond, which is a community of resources, support, and educational tools for millions of parents and parents-to-be across the country. And this is how I heard about Lindsay. I was just really amazed by Bump Club and Beyond, and it was a resource that was really valuable to me. So I wanted to know, who is the person behind the brand, and how can I have this person on the show? In year one, she turned a profit, growing her company to 7 figures in revenue each year and her community to over 3 million users. And less than a decade later, she led her company through its acquisition by a large agency holding company. This episode was just so fun. I enjoyed hearing Lindsay's down-to-earth conversation and storytelling about what it means to be a dream driver and what it looked like for her specifically. We talk about networking, personal relationships, how her job in sales really set the foundation of her entrepreneurial endeavors. We talk about bad bosses, catalyst moments, the event that put Bump Club and Beyond on the map, why it's important to prove your concept, and why this myth of the overnight success is so important for all of us to bust. Like, it is not true. Most people are not overnight successes. It took her 7 years to get to a point where she really felt like her business was successful. So, I'm really excited for you all to hear from Lindsay, and there's so much for you to learn from her and her story. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you're sharing it with your community. You can find us across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dreams and Drive. And if you want to join our weekly newsletter, The Keys, and get weekly email updates delivered right to your inbox, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join to sign up. All right, let's hear from Lindsay.
Thanks so much, Raina, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am super excited to have you on. We were chatting before we got started, but I didn't get to tell you this. So everybody knows on the show I have a young son, a 1.5-year-old named Axel. And it's funny because I first heard of you when I was pregnant. And I was looking for resources on other moms, like what to prepare. And I think at this point, you might have already sold Bump Club and Beyond because I want to say this had to be like 2020, the beginning of the pandemic. And I think I signed up for like a Target class or something. And that's how I found out about it. And me being a natural explorer, I went back and said, what is this? Who started it? And I have been following you since then. So,
oh my God, that makes me so excited. Thank you for saying that.
I took a how to wash a baby, like how to give a baby a bath class. And I think that they were like something that they pushed out through the newsletter online.
I'm sure. And yes, you definitely signed up for a Target class. I was going to say, you were pregnant during the pandemic and we had, been sold at that point. We were about 1.25 years into our sale and we were about to start our first large scale activation at Target. We were supposed to do 300 stores in one weekend.
Wow.
And the pandemic hit. And so we turned it into like a virtual event series that ended up saving a lot of revenue for the company. And Target ended up buying into it for all of 2020 and then all of 2021. And then they're doing it still. So yes, that makes me so happy.
It worked. And it was something, I think I just like recently unsubscribed from like the newsletter, but it was something that I found useful. So I just think that that's like a personal tie-in. I wanted to let our listeners know about.
Thank you for sharing that. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
So, I love to start our interviews going back in time, right? And thinking about who we were as children, because I think those threads are very important to where we are today. So tell me, Lindsay, who was the young 8-year-old Lindsay? What was inspiring you about the world? What were your big dreams then?
It's hard to say. I don't really remember what I wanted to be. I think at one point I did a talk or like a paper about wanting to be a veterinarian. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting about what I do know and remember about myself then and what I have become and who I've become is I always was very social and I was always a connector. And I mean, even to the point, I have 2 very close friends from first grade who to this day, we're still friends. And
I love that.
They always joke with me that we met in first grade in the line going in from recess. I didn't know them. And they were talking about their charm necklaces. I'm older than you, so I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but those 80s plastic charm necklaces that they've kind of been resurrected. So everyone had these charm necklaces and we were like covered in charms. And the 2 of them were talking about their charm necklaces behind me. And I turned around and I said, they were like, well, I have so many charms and I have so many charms. And I was like, well, I have 75 charms. And I was like, and then that is how we became friends. And to this day, we are still friends, but I've never been one to hesitate to hop in a conversation or reach out. Or if I think I want to be friends with someone or know someone, I make it known. I'm not shy about that. And that has really served me well in terms of course, building a social community that I turned into a business and sold. And then I'm kind of doing it all over again with my new business. So it's, definitely has set the stage for the networking.
I read that, I listened to a recent episode you did with another podcast, and you talked about you also wanted to be a journalist, right? You did have that desire to be a journalist. Like, how did that pan out for you going into college and beyond?
So that's funny before we hopped on and you said that you wanted to be a journalist, I was going to share that with you, but I'm glad we're talking about it now. So that came a little bit later. In high school, I joined the high school newspaper when I was a junior in high school and I loved it. I was named editor-in-chief my senior year, co-editor-in-chief, and with Jason Jones. Shout out to Jason Jones. Haven't seen him in 30 years, but or 20 years. Sorry, I'm really dating myself. But so I was co-editor-in-chief and I loved doing the newspaper. I mean, I won awards. I wrote so many, I lived in that newsroom and I thought I wanted to be a journalist. But when I applied to colleges, I lived in Michigan at the time. And my parents were like, I'm from Detroit, the Detroit area. And they were like, you have to go in state. We have 2 amazing colleges here. Like we're not paying to send you out of state. So I got into Michigan State and then I got into Michigan. And Michigan State had the journalism school, but Michigan was the school I really wanted to go to. It was just, they had the School of Liberal Arts and there was no journalism program. But I ended up going to Michigan and I loved it. And I think it served me well in so many ways. And when I graduated, I ended up, I was recruited to work in advertising by Leo Burnett and then 9/11 happened. And so my job never started, which was crazy. My job was supposed to start September 10th,
in 2001. New York, or were you going to?
In Chicago, but the economy was in the toilet and everyone's jobs got put on hold because no one really knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so eventually in December, I was interviewing for jobs and I got a job at Time Inc. And I got a job for Sports Illustrated for Kids as a sales assistant.
I didn't even know that as a kid. I remember it. I love them.
Such a good magazine, right?
They had a little rip out cards, the
trading cards.
Yeah, trading cards. I remember that.
And so I worked at Time Inc. and I loved it. And I was really shown the world of advertising and ad sales. And truthfully, it was a much more lucrative career than journalism at that point. And I ended up pursuing it. And so I ended up working at Time Inc. and at the Tribune and at MTV and then at Hearst for about a decade. And I worked for huge brands selling advertising and marketing. And I ended up going to graduate school to get my master's in integrated marketing while I was working at Northwestern. I had always wanted to go to the School of Medill for journalism. And I ended up going for IMC, but it's fine. And, and I always wondered, like, am I going to really use this IMC degree? And when I was pregnant, I started my first company, Bump Club. So,
all right, let me pause you there. I have a quick question. What do you think were like the skill sets you were building along this time? Like the things that you were realizing, hey, I wanted to go to journalism school. That didn't happen, but now I'm really succeeding in this career. What were you becoming a badass at during this time?
Honestly, networking and personal relationships. I was in sales. I had an expense account that like rivaled my salary, and which was amazing. That like doesn't exist anymore. And I was paid to take people out, and I literally had to entertain people all the time. And it was so fun, but you really get to know people and you build your network. And truthfully, it was this network that when I launched my company, I sent an email to that, and I said, I am launching this company. If you know anyone who's pregnant, please send them my way. So it proved me so well across so many different arenas, because I did work full-time at Hearst when I started my company. And for a year, I overlapped just about a year. So to your point, to answer your question, I just feel like working in a sales capacity, it was networking, it was interpersonal skills, reading people, negotiating. I mean, I became a really good negotiator. And ultimately that set the stage for some of my biggest deals later on with my business.
You know what's funny? When I was an intern at CBS, I think I told you this, I rotated in different departments every summer, but the one thing they always used to tell me was the best place to start your career, you may not like it, but it's in sales. And if you're connected to the money, you'll always be valuable, and you'll know how companies work, because if you can learn how to make somebody money, you'll always be valuable. Do you think working in sales really was like a catalyst to a lot of the things you're doing now?
Yes, because I mean, really and truly. So, I mean, I'm still having to sell. I have to sell myself now. It's very different, right? Like as a consultant and as a coach, I have to sell myself. But at Bump Club, I had to sell what we were doing. Like I created a multi-pronged media platform that essentially I sold very similar to how I sold Good Housekeeping or Redbook. And, I do think that when you learn how to sell, sales isn't just about like the transaction. It's really about the process that goes into the sale. And a lot of that, to what I was saying before, is networking, interpersonal skills, learning how to read the room. Mm-hmm. And all of those things are important life skills, but they're very important business skills. And you also have to be flexible. In sales, you have to be flexible. And really and truly as an entrepreneur, you do too.
Yeah. So let's go back. You're pregnant with your first child, right? And what was the dilemma that you came across?
So I was pregnant with my first child. I was working at Hearst and I had no pregnant friends. Now, we all have fifth graders. So I just like all of my close friends, we all have fifth graders. So it's really cool when we all get together. But at the time, no one was pregnant. I lived in Chicago. My husband and I didn't have family here. And I was like, who can I connect with? Like, no one wants to talk to me about my pregnancy,
Yeah.
And I said to my husband, there has to be some kind of network. Well, there wasn't. There was prenatal yoga that started at 5 p.m. And it was like a long train ride from my office. So like I would have to leave at 4:00 to get to this class. Like it was just so unfeasible. And I said to my husband, why isn't there anything for expectant parents to meet? Like there's so many ways to meet when you have the baby, and that's so natural. You would go to a class or whatever, but pregnant people need support and community too, especially if you're 100%. Living in a big city and you're transient. Now, keep in mind too, yes, there was like meetup and like community boards.
This is 2010 for people listening.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
So like, and I want to say that because there was no Instagram, there was no Snapchat, no TikTok, like none of that. Facebook didn't even have business pages. So, and I often found when I was initially pregnant that a lot of people turned to the internet for information, and it was bad information. And I very much wanted to kind of put the kibosh on that. And I wanted to find community and bring it offline. Like it's funny that people in that time relied on the internet very similarly to how they rely on it now, but there just weren't as many resources.
Yeah.
And I wanted to meet in person. I did not want virtual friends. I wanted real friends so that my kid could have real friends as well. And that's how I started and why I started Bump Club. And I started hosting events for expectant moms. That's how it started.
What was what was the goal going in? Was it just, all right, this is just a passion? Or was the goal like, all right, I'm going to build this into something?
So I'm not really one to ever half-ass. Okay. So I'll say that, but there was no like plan or goal or like, I mean, I didn't know, to be honest. Like, I think that after the first couple of events where I, through word of mouth only, had 50, 75, 100 people show up, I realized that there was truly something special that I was building. And you have to keep in mind, like those first two events, I didn't get money for them. There was no monetary exchange. They were free. And they were a lot of work, and then like the third event, we charged a ticket fee, but it still cost me money to host the event. Like I wasn't quite there yet. I didn't have sponsors or, I wasn't like making money. Mm-hmm. So, but that did come very naturally given my background in ad sales. So it wasn't long before I did start making money, but there really was no like plan. And when I was pregnant, it was kind of like, let's have these events to meet my lifestyle. Let's see what happens. Then I went on maternity leave. I had a really good first baby. Like truly, like, don't worry, my second still doesn't sleep. She's 8. So like,
oh my gosh, my son doesn't sleep through the night either.
So, well, your second will. So like if you decide to have another baby ever, like, I mean, literally like my first slept through the night at like 6 to 8 weeks. She slept in like, like I did work, like I built Bump Club on my maternity leave. And, it was during that time that I realized that this is something people want this. I was very forthcoming, open and honest about my pregnancy and my life as a new mom. I was connecting with people. It was amazing, and building those connections ultimately turned into customers, which was awesome. And so I ended up going back to work after maternity leave for about 3 weeks. Like it didn't last long. Like something had to give. And I loved it. And I was being approached by companies. And I was, when I would reach out to companies, they would reach back. And so my husband and I made the decision that we were going to make a little bit of a change. And it was a big salary I gave up, like a big secure salary, but I was giving it up for a lifestyle that I could control and I could be home for my daughter and then eventually my second daughter. So there really wasn't a plan. It was kind of like an as we went. And it really wasn't until probably like year 2 or 3 that there really was like a plan in place.
I was going to ask you, how did you get the courage to like not look back, right? Or did you? Did you think, was it hard for you to just say, all right, I'm going to go full steam ahead with this? So
there were a couple of like environmental, situational things going on that really pushed me to make this decision. So the first of which was right before I had my daughter, I had the most amazing boss, Darren Mazuka. Shout out to Darren Mazuka. Mm-hmm. He is a father of 5 and he always left me alone. Like he was so excited for me when I got pregnant. He was just so supportive. And I did my job. I showed up and did my job year over year, grew my territory. It was, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million. Like I was one of the top performers at Good Housekeeping. And right before I had my daughter, I got a new boss. And it was like literally like 5 weeks before. Like I went on a trip, like right when I was like supposed to stop traveling, I went on a trip to meet her. And like, then I couldn't travel anymore. So she was not so supportive. And she did not have children, and she probably was never going to have children unless she adopted. She was older than me at the time, and so she made my life kind of miserable, to be honest. And when I was coming back, she made it very clear, I heard about your side business, and if I ever hear that you're doing it on my time, there will be like repercussions. Which like, who doesn't have a side business? Her time
when she's working for a company, it's not even her company, right? And then okay,
well, and also I was performing, right? Yeah. So it was very clear to me that this was not going to be a good situation. And when I realized that I could not work for Hearst, be a mom, and then, also run this company that I was trying to start, I said to my husband, what's the worst that happens? And this is kind of like my catalyst for everything. And I share this a lot. Like, what is the worst that happens? The worst that happens is I leave and the company doesn't take off. And so I go back and get another job. Can I live with that? And the answer was yes.
Okay.
And the answer was yes. And I knew it was not going to be a good situation if I stayed. And so I left. And funny enough, after I left, I was approached by like multiple people in the industry who wanted me to like cover maternity leaves or for other positions. And it was about a year and a half that like people still reached out that and then realized like, okay, like she's
serious
done
about this. She's not, she's not coming back.
But I did feel like I could in that moment. And that's kind of the catalyst that and like the litmus test that I use for everything now. It's like, can I live with that? And if I can, then okay, then like, what is the worst that happens? And we figure it out. So I didn't really look back. Once I left, I really hit the ground running and it kind of like exploded and took off from there.
I was going to ask you about that because I think, you had such a large community and you built it quickly, right? Hey, dream drivers, you know I'm all about adventure and dream driving, so I want to let you know about family-friendly fun you need. This summer, Disneyland Resort invites you to celebrate soulfully at the happiest place on earth. I love to take it back to childhood, so check this. On select days at Disneyland Park, rediscover and celebrate Simba's journey from timid cub to mighty king with Tale of the Lion King, a live stage show inspired by the Lion King. Narrated by the storytellers of the Pride Land, Simba's rise to royalty is presented in a unique theatrical style with live music and dance inspired by the cultural roots of this timeless story. If you're hungry, enjoy a special menu inspired by the Tale of Lion King with items including chicken coconut curry sweet potato and the Pride Rock Punch. That just sounds so good. There are so many ways to feed every part of your soul throughout Disneyland Resort this summer. Theme park admission and park reservations are required for park entry. Visit Disneyland.com for more details and theme park tickets. Dream drivers, Hennessy celebrates those who never stop and never settle in their never-ending pursuit of greatness. Maurice Ashley lives his passion. Through his love of chess, he made history in 1999 as the world's first Black Grandmaster. An inspiring story of intellect and brilliance, his ability to push the potential of his own mind to new levels of greatness is universally inspiring. Visit Hennessy.com to learn more about Maurice Ashley. In the world of the mind, there are no limits. Hennessy, never stop, never settle. Dream drivers, life is sweet and made even sweeter when spent with the ones you love. Savor the moment, big or small, with a delicious bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink, or for a new favorite sip whenever you get thirsty along that dream driving journey. Check out the full Starbucks ready-to-drink coffee lineup online or wherever you buy groceries. Because with Starbucks coffee, you're always ready for the right now. Why do you think Bump Club grew so fast?
So for a couple of reasons. Like, one, I just showed up as me. Okay. Like, you have to remember this is before like Instagram. So there was like no like influencers, like there was no such thing. Right. And like, I literally just showed up and shared, like I shared my birth story, and like people would like come up to me on the street and be like, oh my God, I had gestational diabetes too. Like, was
this on your website? Because if there wasn't social media, then what was
it? It was on my website. It was at my events. And then like I was sharing it through my personal Facebook. And then once business pages started, we ended up, we got a business page and whatnot. And we grew alongside social media. But also you have to remember it was a lot easier to grow organically on social media back then. And so when we adapted right away, I mean, like the minute that there was Facebook, we were on Facebook. The minute there was Instagram, we were on Instagram. I mean, I learned how to do it. And then later on I had help, but it was a lot easier to grow a lot faster. However, I do think that word of mouth played a huge role in the success of Bump Club. We had these women that were coming to the events. They were so diehard. I enlisted some of them as brand ambassadors, and then they would spread the word. And then just from people talking to friends in other cities, I had multiple people reach out to me in other cities that wanted to do Bump Club.
Wow.
And that's how we started Austin. And that's how we started Minneapolis. And that's how we started San Francisco and Los Angeles. And then, eventually other cities. What really put us on the map, like nationally, there were a few things that kind of happened all at once. We were doing this large event called Gearapalooza, and
I followed that when I was pregnant. I think you guys still
we did it online.
Yeah.
We did online, but it used to be in person. And so that was an event that we started one city in Chicago. And the next year we did 2 cities and then 6 cities. And that, and it grew and grew until we got to 19 cities. So through Gearapalooza, we garnered the attention of Nordstrom. And Nordstrom reached out to us and they actually asked us to host Gearapalooza. And I said no, because Gearapalooza was an event that we created to support small retailers and to support independent baby retailers. So I said, that's not going to be a fit, but why don't we create a program that Nordstrom owns? And so Nordstrom bought this activation. It was like we created the activation and then brought our community to it. But it was our first national activation. Well, it was our second actually, because that happened at the same time as Target. I had someone working for me in Minneapolis and someone reached out to her from Target Corporation and they wanted us to do an activation. And so that activation though started very local. It was Chicago and Minneapolis only. And that grew over time. And that's something that is still going on today. I mean, when I owned Bump Club, it was like a 6-figure revenue driver and now it's 7. So, it's a very different thing. And those were the things that kind of put us on the map, but it's all of these things working together, right? It's like me showing up. It's us utilizing really awesome partnership and collaboration and grassroots opportunities. And then it's, the social media piece as it's growing. And then just being authentic and connecting with the community. And the more we were authentic, and then it became not just me, right? It was me and my team, and that we all showed up and people wanted to be around us. People wanted to engage with us. They wanted to come to our events and we were humans just like they were. And I think honestly, when Instagram became a thing and moms became really filtered, people very much appreciated the fact that we showed up as ourselves. I mean, I showed up not wearing makeup. I showed up on our account with 70,000 people. I didn't care because it was important to me to just be me.
It's funny. As you were talking, I wrote down 3 Ps, right? For Lindsay Pinchuk, I wrote down 3 Ps. You solved the problem. And I feel like that's a big thing with community. You had the answer to a problem that people wanted. You had partnerships, which also helps kind of fuel that. And then you also had the promotion of that word of mouth promotion. So that was just some 3 Ps that I thought of. Talking about partnerships, I think that whole idea of leveraging collaborations and partnerships is something we all, especially in the content creating space, everyone wants to aspire to that, right? I want to work with this brand. I want to work with that brand. This could be a podcast all by itself, just brand partnerships, right? But what do you think was the biggest, what made your partnership successful? How were you able to really grow the partnership side of the business? Because a lot of people are it seems so hard to do. How was it? How were you guys able to attack it?
So it's really funny you're asking me this because I legitimately an hour and a half ago taught a full hour class about this.
Oh, wow.
So to 25 female founders. So I will say this, the one thing that I think made this successful is that I didn't show up looking to transact right off the bat. I showed up and I became a good partner. I was a good partner and my partners were good partners. And we together created these activations or whatever, if I was talking about a swaddle or whatever it was. And I utilized my initial partnerships. I was nothing. And I had Summer Infant giving me swaddles for 50 people. I wasn't going to charge them, I mean, I saw
you were reaching out to brands at this point. Was it a lot of grassroots outreach to brands?
Yes.
Okay.
But I wasn't going to be greedy, right? I just wanted it to be natural. And I knew that if it was successful, I would be able to take that partnership and turn around to a different brand and say, hey, I'm working with BritTax. I'm working with Summer Infant. And then those other people started saying, well, how can I work with you? And then we started the payment process. It wasn't here's my rate sheet right off the bat. I proved myself. I worked really hard to not just take their product and take money, but to take their product and talk about it and then have people use it and also talk about it. And the natural and authenticity of what we were doing just that lent itself to more and more brands wanting to work with us and hearing about us down the road. And so I always say that, like, in the class this morning, I was sharing how, like, Gearapalooza, for example, the first time we did Gearapalooza, when you think
give
about
our listeners just a one-on-one on what it actually is.
So Gearapalooza was an event that basically you would show up. Eventually we did it in like a ballroom or, like an event space. But initially we did it inside a small retailer. And you would go and you would meet and mix with all the different baby brands. And then you would sit down and have a talk from my work husband, Jamie Grayson. And then you would get this like giant gift bag that would, like, people unbox and unbag them on YouTube. It's insane. Okay. So it was a great event for expectant parents. You learned a lot of really useful information. But the first time we did it, there were 3 partnerships going on. We had the retailer, we had my speaker, Jamie, and we had all of the brands. And I think at that point, the brands paid a very nominal fee. It was like a few $100s. It wasn't like a big thing. The event didn't really cost me anything except for paying Jamie. And then everyone paid a fee to come. So like we did make money from it. But what happened was we sold out immediately.
Wow.
We had a second night added. And then the next year, we were able to up our game. Like that event took place in August. So then the next year we were able to charge more to the brands. We were able to charge more for the ticket. So it's like, don't be greedy right up front, because you might not make money, but prove your concept, improve your ability, and the rest will come.
And I think, like, especially in this day and age, 2022 and social media, everybody just wants to jump to the glitz and glamour, right? And wants to jump to the big bills, big budgets. And my day job is I work at Paramount, formerly Viacom CBS, in partnerships and marketing. I'm a brand partnerships marketing manager. So I'm seeing now that I'm on this side, on the other side of money, how sometimes working with like different brands and like, you really want to show value. And if you can show value, people will find a way to want to work with you again. So I love that you say that, but don't let social media trick you from actually putting in the work. And I do think that a lot of people now are just trying to get to the bag a little bit too early, and they don't have they don't have any stake in the game yet.
I could not agree with you more. I think that way too often now people think that it happens overnight and that there's a shortcut. And to your point, like they don't have to put in the work, and you do, because the minute you don't, brands are savvy. They see through it and they're not going to work with you again. There is nothing worse than having a brand that doesn't come back to work with you. I mean, it takes you so much more effort and time to find a new partner than it does to renew an existing partner. So you have to really work that relationship and take care and nurture that relationship so that you can, come back time and time again. And ultimately, like what I just said with Target, like Target at first was a 6-figure partner, a low 6-figure partner of Bump Clubs. I can't get into specifics, but after, the acquisition, it became a 7-figure partner of Bump Clubs. And the brands were paying. I mean, so it was like, it became something so much more. And it was an 8-year relationship. I mean, this didn't happen overnight,
Yeah. Did you, what was a challenge that you faced during this time? If you could look back at the time of you building Bump Club, what was a huge hurdle that you had to navigate? And was it easier? Was it not easy?
No, I mean, I don't think being an entrepreneur and owning your own business is ever easy. I mean, it really is not for the faint at heart, to be honest.
Yeah.
But the pluses make it worthwhile to me. Something that was a challenge to me is I'm not a numbers person, like at all. And
even in sales, was it like you just, once you got a sale, you kind of passed it off to the people who did all that?
Yes, I sold it, got the insertion order and passed it to the finance person,
Yeah.
But I just am not good at making a budget and P&L. And those things just, even though I took a class in grad school, that's not my strong suit. I'm a marketer. I can sell things. I'm creative. And so, that was something that I wished that I had reached out and gotten help with sooner, because we grew very fast. And I wished, in hindsight, and I say this kind of a lot, I wish that I had co-founded the business with someone who was more operationally and financially sound, and could have complemented my marketing and creativity and sales. So, but I did end up hiring someone. It took a couple of people before I got to the right person. And once I did, I was able to really free up and focus my time on growing the brand, which I did. So, and I also wouldn't have been able to sell Bump Club without that help, to be honest.
So let's talk about that. You're talking about selling. A lot of times when we're building this dream of ours, we never think that one day it might not be ours anymore, right? Why the decision to part ways and to pass Bump Club on to the next round of who would nurture it?
So it got to a point where, before the sale, before I had even entered conversations, it got to a point where I was kind of like, I feel like I can't work like this anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I had
what? What do you mean?
I had bootstrapped this whole business. I felt so responsible for my team. It was very stressful, really and truly, making sure we had enough cash and capital for payroll. I never took money from anyone. I never took an investment. I never took anything. So it was just, that to me was very stressful. And I also always felt like I had a shelf life. I can do strategy and I can talk about growing a business and I can talk about being a parenting expert. I could talk about parenting till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, my kids at that point were 6 and 9. Okay. And so I wasn't pushing the up a baby stroller anymore, yet I was telling people to, and it felt weird.
Hopefully you didn't have to, right? At this point, you're like, I'm done. I'm not trying to go back to that stage.
Right. No, I was like, no more kids. I was literally like, there, and people would ask me are you going to have a third baby? And are you going to try for a boy? I was like, no, no, we are done. Shop is closed. And I didn't really want to be the face of a company that was for really expectant and new parents anymore. That to me felt a little inauthentic. My experiences were, as I got older, they were just starting to be less relevant. And I built this whole company on authenticity. So it just felt weird to me. So I knew that I always wanted to do something. I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to get investors or if I wanted and raise money or if I wanted to sell it. And in the summer of 2019, I was reached out to on LinkedIn, oddly enough, by 3 different entities. And it was just kind of a chance thing. I had just said to my financial person, I'd like to start getting things in order so maybe we can take out the business to sell it. And then these 3 companies approached me. And to me, it was just like a blessing. It was the right time. And 2 of them I knew they weren't the right fit. And then the one we ended up going with felt at the time like the right fit. And they wanted me, they wanted my brand, they wanted my team. And that was very important because I was not going to go work for another company, which one of the other companies wanted me to come work for them without my team. And that was a non-negotiable. I wasn't going to do that. So I ended up, it was very quick. We closed the deal in the beginning of 2019. And I stayed on for 2.5 years. And it was really towards the end of the second year that, and it was also the end of, it was the end of 2020. So the pandemic, and I had been leading webinars and all this stuff online, which that's how you found me.
Yeah.
That I really I felt it was time. I had other people approaching me for projects that I really wanted to take on, other female founders, other brands that I had worked with. And these were things that I wanted to do and I couldn't do because the company who bought me had me working 80 to 100 hours a week. And
were you working more now as an employee than as a founder?
I did. And that was part of it too, and I have to really, truthfully, I have to be careful about what I say because I do have contracts. No, that's okay. But I can say that, yes, I did. And, and that was a big thing, was that I sold it to have less responsibility in certain areas, which I totally did not deal with, HR, finance, operations, any of that after I sold. But I was dealing with all of our content, our strategy, all of it. I was doing all of our social. I did not have help. And that in and of itself was its own job. And it was round the clock and it was burning me out. And I was I sold this to not do this. And so it just, all of the pieces really kind of lined up that it was time. And it was time. And so I asked myself, what's the worst that can happen? And to me, the worst that happened was that Bump Club would eventually go away. And if I wasn't there, and can I live with that? And I can, because I feel I have made my mark. People know me from Bump Club. They know I'm not there anymore. I hope that it lives on forever and ever and continues to support parents and expectant parents. God, I hope that. I think it is so needed. But I felt that I had reached my limit with it. And I really wanted to help other founders. I really wanted to help other people find success and learn from my mistakes and my successes. And so that's what I'm doing.
Hey, Dream Drivers. So you know how I start every show asking guests the same question? What inspired you as a child? What were your childhood dreams? I remember as a kid, a place I always wanted to visit was Disneyland. Why? It represented a place of dreams, a place of wonder, a place where imagination and creativity were put on a pedestal. It was just a happy place full of magic. Well, guess what? Disney can still be the place where you go to fulfill some of your childhood dreams. This summer, Disneyland Resort invites you to the happiest place on earth. And yes, you can bring the family too. There's just so many things and so many types of dreams you can put in motion. Let me give you a taste. On select days at Disneyland Park, you can rediscover and celebrate Simba's journey from timid cub to mighty king with Tale of the Lion King, a live stage show inspired by the Lion King. It's narrated by the storytellers of the Pride Lands. Simba's rise to royalty is presented in a unique theatrical style inspired by the cultural roots of this timeless story. Now, if food is your thing, nearby enjoy a special menu inspired by Tale of the Lion King with items including the chicken coconut curry sweet potato or Pride Rock Punch. If you're into music, through September 5th at Downtown Disney District, visit the Soul of Jazz and American Adventure, a touring Dream Drivers. What's up? It's summer and I know we all are on the quest for the perfect beverage to quench our desire for refreshing. So here's the question. What have you always wanted to try? Is there something that has been a dream of yours, a flavor, a taste that you just really need to get at? Gold Peak Real Brewed is here to unleash your thirst for trying. Real brewed tea, real cane sugar, real delicious. From sweet tea, unsweetened tea, green tea, California raspberry tea, Georgia peach tea, lemon tea, lemonade tea. There are so many options to find what's best for you. And this summer we need to try something new, try something brewed, because nobody wants to be dream driving with a dry mouth or thirsty. We need that fuel to be at our best for this ride. So take this as your sign to say yes, opt in, go for it. Because trying is what life is all about. Try Gold Peak. Were you excited the moment? I'm thinking of it like you had new wings, right? Talk to me about the mindset that you took into this next journey of yours.
So when I left, it was, my last day as an employee was July 22nd. And the agreement was that I was going to consult it was either 8 weeks or 10 weeks. I think it was 8 weeks, 10 hours a week. So I consulted myself out and set them up and, gave them all the playbooks and everything. Cause a lot of things were still in my head at that time. Yeah,
because you were doing you knew all the little
even though we had staff, even though we had a team, a lot of it was in my head. And so I will tell you though, that on it was July 23rd. That was my last day. And on July 23rd, when I closed my computer, my phone rang and it was my counterpart. And she was reaching out because I needed to give her one last password. And I had closed my computer and I was sitting right here in my chair. And I said to her, wait, I need a minute. I got to call you back because I think I'm going to faint. And I literally, it was this physical, I can't even describe it, but I slumped back in my chair and I kind of blacked out for a few minutes. I yelled to my husband. I was I think I'm going to pass out. And it was a physical, it overtook me. I was so relieved, to be honest. I was really just so
You didn't
relieved.
realize the weight. You were literally carrying around this weight and it had been lifted.
And to not have to sign on to the social media account before I went to bed, when I woke up a million times a day, that in and of itself, made me so relieved. And so I ended up consulting for the 10 weeks, 10 hours a week or whatever it was. And on September 8th of last year of 2021, that was my last day. I was already like relieved and out the door at that point. And so, that was kind of more of a formality than anything. But most people at that point had thought that I had left. I think a lot of people didn't realize that I was still working with them and consulting. But to answer your question, yes, I don't think I realized in the moment how relieved I was going to feel.
What would you title the chapter of this journey right now that you're on?
I would say I've been saying Lindsay Pinchuk 2.0. I mean, I fully believe that everything that I have done to this point, that Bump Club, the whole journey, like I loved that. Like everything about what I did, I loved. But I also believe that everything has its purpose, right? And like the purpose of that, I do believe, was to teach me the skills to be able to do it again and to be able to teach others how to do it. And so, now here I am, and my goal is to support female founders however they need. So like, some people work with me one-on-one. Some people just follow me on Instagram and take my tips. Some people take my classes. Some people listen to my podcast. Whatever it is, I don't care. If I can help people, that's what I did as a parenting expert. And now I want to do that as an entrepreneur expert. And it really is Lindsay Pinchuk 2.0.
Do you have a game plan? I know you have like these different ways now. And I think sometimes when we make these pivots, we think we have to have it all figured out. Are you going with the flow, or do you have something in mind?
Yeah, it's like kind of loosey-goosey. I am kind of going with the flow, to be honest. Like when I first
You're strategic. You have that strategy. I know you probably have some strategy behind going with the flow though, right?
Yes, there definitely is some strategy. I mean, I have some ideas of like what I want to do and whatnot. When I left in September, during that like 10-week consulting period, I sent out an email and I got a few clients. So, I really wanted to have an income. So yeah. I started working one-on-one with clients more in a consulting role. And I've been doing a lot of work for brands. And then I've had a couple of coaching clients as well. And through that, I've developed a class that I've started to teach. And I've morphed that class too. Like I taught it once and then I got feedback, and I'm relaunching it again to be like a 3-month program with me, which is very similar to my 3-month coaching program one-on-one. I started my podcast, which I love. And that goes back to me wanting to be a journalist.
But it's all coming full circle, right?
Full circle. I can't I know you feel this way too. I can't believe that I get to show up and like meet these cool people every single day. Like when I'm interviewing, it's crazy to me. Like it's so fun. I love it. I've gotten clients from that too, which has been great. I've had some people ask me to public speak, so I'm potentially dabbling in that a little bit. And truthfully, I am kind of figuring it out as it goes. Like I told my husband, I want to take the year, figure out what I like, what I don't, what makes the most money for the least amount of input. I feel like I've earned that. And, I just want to be there for people. Truly, I love talking to people and sharing my knowledge.
I get that energy from you.
I'm glad. I mean, if anyone can learn from my mistakes or from things that I did right, like I feel my job's done.
Oh, you said mistakes. And I don't think we talk about that. What was a big mistake that you'll never forget that was really important to your journey?
I think a big mistake was when we were expanding Bump Club, we kind of put the cart before the horse when we were going into other cities. Like we were so successful in Chicago. We were so successful in Austin and in Minneapolis. And when I was approached by moms in LA and San Francisco who I knew, we treated those cities very similar to ours. And we should have done a little bit more research, done a little bit more competitive analysis. And we shouldn't have just gone and launched Bump Club because it fell flat in both cities.
What was so different about, like, I don't know LA and San Francisco culture that much, but was it like a cultural thing or was it just experiential thing?
Well, LA is different in the sense that like everyone, wants to be famous or like wants free things because there are so many like swag events before there were even swag events, so that was a piece of it. The other piece of it with both cities that was very different than the other 3 cities we were in was the geography. So like in LA, you are not going to go from like the Valley to Santa Monica for a dinner. And so like it was really, you really had to have, if you were an events company, you kind of had to have like 3 or 4 different outposts for your events or else you were like shutting people off. because people just didn't travel because of the traffic. Very similar in San Francisco. People were not coming from Marin County into the city during rush hour over the bridge to have a dinner. And so it was just these little things that, like, in Chicago, it didn't matter. Everyone worked downtown. And our dinners were downtown. And so, and also people like move around a lot more here. And same with Austin at the time. Now it's different. And same with Minneapolis. But, I just think we didn't do enough research. And so what I would say is that if you are starting a business and you are looking to expand into other regions, that you really need to do your homework from a regional standpoint, because every part of this country is different. And just because it works in Chicago doesn't mean it's going to work in Nashville or Austin or wherever it might be. You really have to take a look, and also take a look at the community within each region.
I never thought about that. Like, it's just something I feel like, because I'm from the New York City area, right? You become so spoiled about what life is like, and you just think you can copy and paste it, right? And it definitely, like, things that will float in New York probably won't float in Atlanta or Miami. There's different ecosystems, and it's just really interesting that you brought that up, because it's not something people really talk about a lot.
Well, how about this? You brought up Miami. Like, when we started doing events in Miami, there's a very big bilingual culture there. And so we had to try to kind of figure out how to navigate that, being an English speaking company that, I don't speak Spanish. Like, I'm a white Jewish girl, from the suburbs, but that was something too, like, everyone deserves this information, no matter what language you speak, no matter what your background is. And so when we went into Miami, we had to be very cognizant of that as well. And making sure that we were including the Hispanic population, even if our events weren't in Spanish. Does that make sense?
So that makes a lot of sense, because you weren't you don't think about that, right? But nowadays, having one thing I learned about was even accessibility, right? Like, making sure that you're inclusive, that you're just not thinking about, I took this marketing course, and I had never thought about accessibility for events, right? Like, making sure, inclusivity, you think about, all right, make sure you have your gamut of the rainbow, right? But you also need to make sure you're being accessible to people who with wheelchairs, people who are hearing impaired. There's so many levels to it.
So it's funny you say that. Target actually was a really big catalyst for making me understand how important that is, because of course, they're so corporate and so good. Yeah. But when we started doing online events with Target, we had to make sure that all of our webinars had closed captions. And this was before you could do the closed captions. Now on Facebook, you can do them automatic.
That's technology has increased so much in the past 2 years.
So we had to hire someone to which was good that this was shown to me, but it was oh my God, this is something that I didn't think about. But as an entrepreneur, you learn these things, and that moving forward, every partner we had a person in place to deal with the technology of the Zoom and make sure it was accessible.
I love that. We're kind of winding down now, Lindsay, but I want to ask you this, because there might be somebody listening who wants to give up because they're just not growing, right? They're like, I've been doing this. Like, Lindsay, you had this growth in 2-3 years. I've been year 10 and I'm not going anywhere, right? What would you say to that person who's been dream driving for a long time and just feels like they're still in park?
I think that you really need to look at the numbers. And the one thing that I will say now is very different than when I first started my business. And I want to correct you. It wasn't really 2-3 years. Yes, we started picking up momentum after 2-3 years, but it really and truly wasn't until year 6, 7, 8 that we were seeing 7 figures. That was probably year 6. And I had a team, so it took time, right? It definitely took time. But the great thing now is that with social media and with all of the technology that we have our hands in, there are numbers, there are insights. So if something's not working and you don't know where to find those numbers or where to find those insights, first Google it, because there's literally step-by-step tutorials everywhere. Learn how to read the numbers, learn about the insights, learn what they mean. And you just have to make little changes and pivots. And just because you pivot does not mean you fail. It does not. You can, I'll give you for example, recently that happened to me. I was okay, I'm starting this podcast and I'm going to do a membership. because people were asking for more content. And so I put up this membership and like, it didn't really get the traction that I thought that it would get. And again, I think I put the cart before the horse and the numbers just like weren't there. So guess what? I pivoted and I put that on hold and I focused on my class. And that was as a result of a coach I was working with, because they said, do your class, get traction for your class, and your class is going to want to have somewhere to join you after, and then you can launch the membership. So I don't feel like a failure that the membership didn't take off at first. It just didn't. That was not really a numbers example. That was just, it didn't work. But, you know, look at the insights, learn to read your Google Analytics, learn where your traffic's coming from.
Or even social media, like you can see little levers, although like you said, it's really hard to grow organically, but you can see what people are responding to. You can use those Instagram insights to make informed decisions around your content. So definitely.
Yes. So you can look at those insights and be like, oh, this post garnered like 20 new likes. I need to make more posts like this. Like, that's what you do, you know?
It's so funny. My sorry to cut you off.
No.
My most viewed reel was this one that like, it was so random. I just put it up one day of my son and my dad. And I put this random song called Grandpa's Love and people just loved it. I'm like, this has nothing to do with anything, right? I just put it up because I thought it was cute. And it speaks to my story of having a son. And, you know, people know about my dad from my podcast, but it's like, all right, how do I use this information about why this went viral? I'll say viral,
that
right?
showed you people want to see you behind the scenes. They don't just want to see you like upfront businessy. They want a little behind the curtains of Raina, you know, they want to know what's going on. And honestly, I always tell my classes that my best viewed reels are the ones that I put zero thought into, and the ones that I just like put up. Like I put up like a clip from a Britney Spears concert with like some funny like caption a few months ago. It was viewed so many times. I was like, great. Like, I'm so glad that like, this is
people
what is
want real. People want to know like there's somebody real behind this, that they're relatable. I was talking about that with another guest this morning. Like people want to relate and they want to just feel like they can do it too. And that's something that I'm trying to figure out how to use those levers to really like get the podcast growing even more. So I love that you mentioned that. All right. So Lindsay, you cannot be a dream driver without having your keys to success, right? So tell me 3 things that every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road.
Persistence and perseverance. I mean, really and truly, you have to be willing to just give it your all and to not give up, even if things are not going your way to that. I mean, we just talked about that. Like you have to just keep going. You can make changes, but you got to keep going and you have to be determined. You have to have belief in yourself. Okay. Like, and what you're building. Like if you don't believe in it, no one else is going to, and they're going to see it. They're going to see through it. If you don't believe in yourself, people are going to see through it. You really have to share that and share that belief. And I think the last thing that I would say is every dream driver needs a network, a good network that they can rely on. And a network comes in so many different forms, right? Like you have your network of friends that are there to support you and lift you up. You have your network of business people that you can go to and consult with. You have your network of maybe parents who are supporting you as a working parent. There are different networks, but you need to have a good network that you know you can reach out to and tap into at a moment's notice. And you should make sure that you are a part of that network for other people as well. That's what makes a good network.
This conversation was so amazing, Lindsay. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Tell our dream drivers where they can find you online if they want to connect with you, learn more about what you do, and want to be part of your journey as well.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. This was so fun. And I told you I want to have you on Dear Founder as well.
Yes, we got to make it happen.
We will absolutely make it happen. So you can find me at Lindsay Pinchuk on Instagram. Please join me there. I'd love to talk to you. It's me. It's not anyone else. It's me in the DMs. Okay. Come into my DMs, talk to me. You can find me at lindsaypinchuk.com. That's all the information about all of the things I offer. And then behind the mic twice a week at Dear Founder. And I interview various founders on my podcast and we talk about how to found, grow, scale, and sometimes sell a business.
All right, so guys, you just finished listening to this episode. Go and listen to an episode of Lindsay's podcast now, all right? Well, thank you so much again, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for having me.
COVID-19 moves fast, and now you can too. If you feel symptoms, even if they're mild, you should test fast. Test positive and at high risk for severe COVID-19? Then act fast with authorized oral treatments that can be taken at home and must be taken within 5 days from when symptoms begin. COVID-19 moves fast, and now you can too by asking your healthcare provider if an oral treatment is right for you. Learn about a treatment option at treatcv19.com. This message is sponsored by Pfizer.
If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you are sharing with your own communities. You can find us across the board, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So screenshot this, tweet it, send it to somebody via email. Let people know that you enjoyed Lindsay's dream driving journey and there's so much that you think they can learn as well. If you want to join our email newsletter, The Keys, and get weekly updates delivered right to your inbox, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. And lastly, if you are a dream driver or if you know of someone who you think would be great for the podcast, they can sign up at dreamsanddrive.com/pitch to pinch their chance of being on the show. All right, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we will chat again in episode 320. Bye, guys.